Alrighty, so welcome to the CM10 Aquarius Cup guide. This is the first dirt champion meeting that we have seen so far on Global, and I'm very excited to do this guide for you guys. So as a note, CM10, the Aquarius Cup, is a dirt track. It's a 1600 meter track, which means it is standard distance. It is a mile track. It will be sunny, firm, winter, left-handed, and on the Tokyo Racecourse for all of your relevant greens. It is dirt time, which means that every UMA who you submit to run on the CM should have an A dirt aptitude. This is a list of all of the UMAs currently in Global that can hit Dirt A with only sparks. They don't have to worry about inheriting a dirt pink spark in order to hit Dirt A. On the top row are UMAs who already have Dirt A, so they don't need to inherit any sparks at all in order to run on this track. Then we have UMAs that need 1 spark, then we skip ahead and have UMAs that need 7 sparks, and then we have UMAs that need 10 sparks. So for 10 sparks UMAs, you're going to need to have dirt on both sides of your legacy. So ideally, you would borrow a 9-star dirt parent, and then you would use a dirt parent of your own to get those UMAs to Dirt A before you start their careers. This is going to make it a lot easier on you when you are trying to roll for those inheritances. For UMAs that have Dirt F, you need to have 10 sparks of dirt and at least 1 dirt inspiration in order to get to Dirt A. For UMAs who have Dirt G, you need 10 sparks and at least 2 dirt inspirations to hit Dirt A. Having Dirt B or lower will reduce your acceleration on this track, and it's not good. When you have Dirt B, you're always going to be thinking to yourself, if this was Dirt A, maybe it would be performing better. And in order to avoid that, you really want to try to get your UMAs to Dirt A if at all possible. Dirt B might be copable if the UMA is otherwise amazing, like if it's the highest roll you've ever had, Dirt B can maybe work, but you really want to have Dirt A, and Dirt C and lower is just not workable. It has to be A, it maybe could be B, but it's tough. Fuji Kiseki is my Oshi, and she is Dirt F, and so for me personally, I need to hit at least 1 dirt inspiration in her inheritance to get her to Dirt A, so trust me when I say I know that pain. Now here's the race course, the Tokyo 1600 meters. As always, you want to accelerate when the middle leg turns into the final leg of the racetrack. And in order to kind of visualize where that's going to be, I've put a big arrow there, and as you can see, that arrow is towards the end of the final corner, moving into the final straight, as well as positioned near an uphill. So what this means is when you're looking for accelerations, what you want to keep an eye out for is keywords that say things like final straight, late race corner, late race straight, and uphill. Those are some keywords that you can use to try to figure out when your UMA will be accelerating and see if it lines up with this arrow that is pointing to that acceleration point. And if you're confused as to what I mean by all of this, I will link my acceleration and UMA primer here in the top right corner, and you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about and why it's so important that we have our acceleration skills to hit right here. Now for fronts, angling and scheming is back on the menu, so fronts are going to have a really fun time in this CM. Angling and scheming has a near perfect proc in this CM, but it will only hit in first place. So you really want to be first place right as the middle leg turns into the final leg, and then you will get your acceleration. Victoria por plancha is going to be hitting in first or second place when you hit that final straight. The blue line here is El Condor Pasa, and the red line here is the inherited version of it. So as you can see, it lasts much longer on Pasa herself, as well as the fact that it is a 0.3 acceleration on Pasa, and it is only a 0.1 acceleration when it is inherited. So it's going to be much weaker when inherited, but it's still definitely worth a pickup on a front runner. Additionally, Unrestrained is going to have some function on this track. It is going to hit when you are first place at a random spot on the final corner. Now, this means that it could hit with carryover into the final leg. It could hit perfectly where you're perfectly lining it up, or you could whiff it entirely and hit it way, way, way too early for it to do anything. Now, some people may remember that during CM7 in the Scorpio Cup, Unrestrained was very, very good because it was usually hitting near a good spot. In this one, Unrestrained is not quite as good, but it's still decent enough that you can gamble on it if you are running an UMA like Silent Suzuka. For front runners, Smart Falcon is going to have a very strong base kit. She already has great aptitudes for it. She can easily get mild sparks because she doesn't have to inherit other sparks for her aptitudes, but she does have to inherit groundwork. So you will need a groundwork legacy for her because she cannot use her own SSR card in order to get groundwork. El Condor Pasa is the natural choice for a second front. She does have a unique acceleration that will hit from first or second position, so the closer to the front she can be, the better off she is. However, she does have a Dirt B, and more crucially, she has a front E, which means in order to make El Condor Pasa into a front runner, she needs 10 front sparks and 1 dirt spark. This is going to help her to compete for her own unique proc, and I think it is going to make her a very strong contender in this CM. And then we have Christmas Ogre Cap here. Christmas Ogre Cap can be run in the front position because it gives her access to Moxie. Moxie is going to be a heal that hits on a hill, and it is a frontrunner only heal. So she can't use Moxie, which does hit on that hill at the final leg, unless she is a front runner. This means that you will have to give her 10 front sparks and then hope that she sparks front on an inspiration, as well as giving her at least 1 dirt spark. In addition, on Christmas Ogre, SP is going to be very tight because you are wanting to try to get all of those crucial front skills, and then you also need to budget out SP for your healing skills in order to trigger her unique. Summer Marazensky is going to be the second easiest front to build. Red Marazensky also falls into this category where they are both Dirt D and Front A, so they need 7 Dirt Sparks, but that's all that they need in order to start hitting the ground running. Summer Marazensky is going to be a little bit better because her unique will actually do something, whereas Red Marazensky is going to have trouble being able to proc her unique at a good time because her unique is going to hit too early on this track. For Summer Marazensky, her unique does require her to get a heal skill, so ideally she would be healing somewhere in the late mid-race so that she can push up and try to take that first position for the angling and scheming proc. And here are the other 2 fronts that I will talk about with a couple huge caveats. So Silent Suzuka can be run as a runaway. I do think that Ace Silent Suzuka is viable on this CM. She will not be as strong as she was in the Scorpio Cup, but because Unrestrained is an accessible unique, she can win as an ace. She can actually win pretty convincingly as an ace, and she can block other fronts from hitting those other uniques. So because Smart Falcon is going to be so strong on this track, Silent Suzuka is a good Uma to use to counter her. However, Silent Suzuka is Dirt G, so she's going to have a really hard time getting to Dirt A in order to be run on this track. It's going to take at least 10 Dirt Sparks with 2 Dirt Inspirations, which means that it's going to be harder to get her to, for example, Mile S. The other unconventional pick we can talk about is Front Taiki Shuttle. So Taiki Shuttle's unique works from 3rd or 4th position, and so Taiki is going to be an option for your 3rd front. That way you can try to push her into the 3rd slot so that she can hit Shooting for Victory with that carryover. So for Pace Chasers, Pace doesn't have very many options that are reliable. However, you can still take Head On, you can still take your Give Mummy a Hug, which will work very similarly to how it did in CM9. And then you can also take No Stopping Me. So No Stopping Me is going to trigger in the late race as soon as the conditions are met. So as soon as you're either blocked on the side or in front of you. No Stopping Me is also pretty decent in front heavy lobbies because you're able to try to No Stopping Me off of the fronts who maybe did not hit angling and scheming. So you're kind of using those fronts as a springboard to try to get ahead of the front who did hit angling and scheming. For Pace, Shooting for Victory is an option on Taiki Shuttle only. Do not inherit Shooting for Victory on a Pace Chaser. As you can see here, the inherited version actually stops right as the final leg begins. So the inherited version does not have carryover, but it is very strong on Taiki Shuttle herself. As a Pace Chaser, Taiki Shuttle will be pretty easy to run. She just has to be able to push ahead of the Pace pack so that she can secure that 3rd and 4th position in a room that might potentially have some front runners in it. El Condor Pasa is in a little bit worse of a position where she also needs to push ahead of the Pace pack, but she has to be 1st or 2nd. So she wants to be first, even more so than Taiki. I wouldn't really recommend running a Pace El Condor Pasa, especially with a Pace Taiki, because they're both competing for one another's win cons, which is to be positioned as far ahead as possible in the Pace pack. You can also run regular Ogre Cap as a Pace Chaser. Triumphant Pulse is just very good in general, and she's a generically all-rounder good option. For late surgers, Let's Pump Some Iron does function perfectly on this track. It is 6th place only, so you really do want to be in 6th position when that final leg is beginning. However, Moving Past and Beyond is a do not take on this track. Moving Past and Beyond has 2 separate proc conditions. Whichever one hits first is the one that is going to activate the skill. And on this track, the second condition will hit first, which makes it proc at the beginning of the final corner. Not when Let's Pump Some Iron procs, but at the beginning of the final corner, which is too early to be useful. Late can also take No Stopping Me, which will help them a lot when they're accelerating into a pace or a failed front. Lates have a couple other options, On Your Left and Furious Feet, both of which happen at 6th or below, both of which are random late race. So these skills look very similar on paper, however Furious Feet is a little bit better because it does have a slightly longer duration. You can definitely take both of them if you are really trying to, quote unquote gamble on getting one of them to proc early enough. But again, because they're both 6th or below, this shouldn't be your only win condition for a late surger. Agnes Digital is going to be a very easy Uma to build because she already has Dirt A and Late A in her aptitudes. She also has an additional gold acceleration in her kit, which only triggers on dirt tracks. This makes her a pretty unique strong pick for this track, as well as being very, very flexible. She can also be run as a pace chaser or an end closer if that's where you want to put her. Fantasy El Condor Pasa is going to be a little bit tricky to run, mostly because running her comes with the opportunity cost that you will not be able to run the other version of Pasa, who is very strong on this track. The other version of Pasa has a more reliable unique that will hit in the final spurt, whereas Fantasy El Condor Pasa will try to hit on the final corner. Now, the final corner does segue into the final spurt, however, that means that you will have to delay this overtake unique if you can, which will be very lobby dependent. Fantasy Pasa does have Furious Feet in her kit, which means that she can be a little bit more flexible as a late surger. But again, it's tricky to recommend her because recommending her basically means not running the other version of Pasa, who is very strong. The original version of Gold City also has an acceleration unique that will hit when she attempts to overtake. However, this unique will often hit very early because it can start triggering about halfway through the course, which means that often her unique is going to be wasted. Gold City has a Keen Eye debuff in her kit, which is a very strong debuff to pick up for this track and can help to position you in the early race so that you go into the mid-race in a strong position. It could be worth considering taking the Gold City SSR card on your other late surgers in order to use this Keen Eye debuff on them, but that's really up to you in terms of how comfortable you are with debuffs and running maybe a suboptimal card in your deck. Festival Gold City has a combo velocity and acceleration unique that hits between 3rd and 6th place. This unique might actually have some carryover into the final stretch, and so this makes the Festival version of Gold City pretty strong on this track. However, she does have a debuff in her kit, but unlike her original version, the Festival Gold City's debuff is not very good on this track because it has a delayed proc. For late and end, you can inherit Red Shift and Shooting for Victory. Now, even though neither of these inherited skills look like they are going to proc with carryover, what you actually do on late and end is that you delay the position proc requirement in order to push the excels back. So you want to not hit 5th place or 4th place respectively until later on in the final corner so that you can actually hit those and delay the procs into the final leg. This is a tech that's only really viable on late and end, but it can be very powerful if the lobby composition is right, and if you are passing Umas at the right time. End closers get straightaway spurt as their unique acceleration. Nobody is surprised. It's a very common skill for end closers to want to take. Additionally, they can also cheat off of the late surger homework by also taking skills like Let's Pump Some Iron, Furious Feet, and No Stopping Me. So end closers are going to look probably very similar to late surgers, except instead of on your left, they're going to be taking straightaway spurt. Our end closer options here are a little bit thin on the ground, but we do have both versions of Haru Urara. The New Year version does have access to a good velocity unique and will definitely be better to run than the 1-star version, who doesn't really have a whole lot because a lot of her kit is mostly recoveries and skills that are not extremely useful. You can also be running a Hishi Amazon who does have Dirt E, so you can get her to Dirt A without needing inheritances. And for all end closers, you can just inherit a lot of excels and then kind of hope to hit, right? Both Harus can also be run as a late surger. And then in addition to all of that, we have a couple of generic accelerations. So these are accelerations that will work independent of position or aptitude in this game. The first one is Highlander, which will hit at a random point on a hill. There's only one uphill on the Tokyo 1600, and it does take place right after the final leg starts. So it's a decent skill to pick up, But because it's a random point, it can definitely hit too late. I myself have a Highlander Uma, and I've been a little bit disappointed in how late it usually hits on this track. Then you also have Ignited Spirit Power, which can hit at a random point in late race. So this is going to be a skill that can hit pretty early, but it can also hit very late. It's still usually worth the pickup if you can get it to proc in your Unity Cup, or if you can inherit it somehow. And then Forward March is going to be a little bit more of a unique acceleration for dirt tracks. It is a random late race acceleration, and it's on the SR and RA1 power card. Agnes Digital has the gold version of Forward March, which is going to make her a pretty strong individual Uma pick for this race. So as you might notice, a lot of these skills that we're looking at are mostly on a random point in late race, unless we're looking at frontrunner skills. So keep that in mind, that frontrunners are maybe going to be a little bit more consistent than some of the other positions, just because frontrunners know exactly when they're hitting a lot of their skills. As far as team comps, the double/triple front comp is back. The double/triple front comp will be controlling acceleration positions. From first place, they will have access to Angling and Scheming and Unrestrained. First and second place, they will have access to Victoria per Plancha, and third or fourth place, they will have access to Shooting for Victory, but only if they're using Taiki Shuttle in a triple front composition. Triple front is really strong because it can control these positions, because you know that if you are running front runners, they're going to be taking up these acceleration positions, which means that you can try to spoil these positions for other players. So for example, if you're running at least 2 front runners and the other 2 players in your lobby are running Pace, El Condor Pasa, they're not going to be able to hit their unique until maybe they pass one of your fronts, which means that you're going to be forcing them into a worse position in the late game. This is why I generally recommend to run El Condor Pasa herself as a front, even though it takes a lot more sparks, because it's very difficult for El Condor Pasa to come back from being in a room with 2 fronts if she is being run as a pace. Taiki Shuttle is similar in that she can get blocked out of her ult position, especially if there are 2 players in the room running multiple fronts each. She's a little bit more flexible because she only has to hit 4th in order to hit Shooting for Victory, so I have seen a lot of pace Taikis hitting 4th place in a lobby with 3 fronts and still being able to activate Shooting for Victory and win. But it is going to be a little bit more of a gamble if you're running a pace Taiki on whether or not you're able to access those acceleration positions. So if you are running a double front comp and you're thinking of adding Taiki as a pace, it might be beneficial to consider instead adding Taiki as your 3rd front. However, I will say that the triple front composition here is going to be a lot more finicky than it was in CM7. Because in CM7, your secondary front was Red Marzensky, who could hit her excel position from 1st through 5th place. But in CM10, your secondary front is going to be El Condor Pasa, who can only hit her acceleration from 1st or 2nd place. So it's a lot less flexible. And when you're adding Taiki into that, you really basically want to structure your comp so that your 1st place is Smart Falcon, or maybe Silent Suzuka, or maybe Marzensky. Your 2nd place has to be El Condor Pasa, because your 3rd place has to be Taiki Shuttle. And if those positions are mixed up, then you're not going to get all of your Excel slots in a row. And so you might wind up having a lot of difficulty with mirroring that very, very strong triple front comp that we were seeing in CM7. It is possible, and I think that it can be extremely strong when it's pulled off in the right way. However, I do want to say that it's not going to be as easy as it was in CM7, especially because we're on a dirt track, and so utilizing an Uma like Suzuka, who you know is always going to be in 1st place, is going to be a lot harder because you would have to manage her dirt sparks from G to A. When you're using Smart Falcon as kind of a stand-in for Silent Suzuka, she is going to be able to fill the role, but she's not going to be quite as reliable at it. She will be pretty reliable because her unique is very strong and she has a really strong kit for this dirt track. However, it's not really very comparable to having access to a runaway Uma. Late surgers are going to be what's considered a quote-unquote less investment composition. This doesn't mean that they're going to be worse, but it does mean that, you don't have to control exactly who's 1st and who's 2nd and who's 3rd in your late composition. You can take advantage of this meta that's favoring frontrunners to try to force your lates to be 6th or below, so you can activate that Furious Feet and that on your left, so you can debuff the entire lobby with that Keen Eye to keep them pulled back so that you can overtake them more easily in the late race. You're going to be relying on the front meta to run that delayed acceleration, that red shift, that shooting for victory. So you're going to be relying on them to hold you back in your positions until you can accelerate on that final stretch in order to move in for the victory. So I feel like for late comps to be very effective, you actually want to run one or two front or pace of your own in order to make sure that your late can be in those further back positions. Now, I do think that lates are going to be a little bit more popular than we're seeing right now in room matches, because lates are going to be the path of least resistance for a lot of players. For example, the most common dirt umas that everybody is going to have is going to be Haru Urara, is going to be Oguri Cap, is going to be El Condor Pasa, is going to be Taiki Shuttle. So Haru Urara and Oguri Cap and El Condor Pasa can all be run as a late very easily. I don't feel like it's the best position for El Condor Pasa, but I do think that because they can be run as a late, we will still see some players running them as late. And of course, a lot of people are going to be running Haru Urara, and Haru is generally by default a late position Uma. So because of this, I do think that players who maybe aren't scrimming in room matches right now will be running more late surgers, and so we'll be seeing more late surgers. So there might be a little bit more competition for those excel slots, which is why I'm saying that you should consider running one or two front or pace in order to help your own lates to be pushed back a little bit more. Pace chasers are not in a great spot in the CM, but they do have some options, right? They can no stopping me off of failed angling and scheming fronts. They can be used to kind of bulk out a comp. So if you aren't comfortable running a lot of front runners, or if you only have El Condor Pasa as a possible front runner, you can go ahead and try to run some pace chasers in order to take advantage of the fact that there will be front runners being run, but also push your lates back a little bit. Taiki is going to be a very strong pace chaser if she's not shut out by front runners. If she can get access to her acceleration positions, she's going to be very strong. El Condor Pasa, I think, is going to be better off as a front in order to hit her unique, but she can still function as a pace, especially if she hits something like No Stopping Me and then chains it into her unique. Anecdotally, I was running my team trials El Condor Pasa in CM10 rooms for a little while, and she was consistently hitting No Stopping Me into her unique at the end of the race and like winning a lot of races, even though I just did not expect her to at all. So I think it is viable, but I do think that she would be better off as a front so that she can more easily access those acceleration positions. End is workable, but it does need to hit. They have more access to Furious Feet than late surgers because they have almost guaranteed access to the 6th position or below, and they compete less for those forward acceleration slots. So it's a lot easier to run like an end closer or even a late surger with a pace Taiki Shuttle, maybe a pace El Condor Pasa as well. They're not competing with your other Umas, so you don't want to be overlapping your win conditions on your team comp. So running end closers or late surgers, if you're running a pace Taiki, might be to your benefit because you're not preventing your other Umas from hitting their win conditions. Now I say don't overlap win cons, but the whole gist of a triple front comp is that they are all overlapping in their win cons. But for front, it's a little bit different because they all have unique accelerations that they can use to push one another up forward. The takeaway here, the thing to take away from this CM10 guide is that really anything can work. We are no longer in CM9. We're back in a meta where all of the positions have some kind of way that they can win. I've seen every position win in scrim rooms. I've seen end Harus win. I've seen late Gold Cities win. I've seen a lot of Oguri Caps win. I've seen a lot of Taikis win. I've seen a lot of Smart Falcons win. I've seen a lot of El Condor Pasas win. It's a very interesting CM because it is so restricted by the fact that you need to have a dirt aptitude, and yet it is so free because so many positions have access to high impact win conditions. So I think it's going to be a very interesting CM to build for. I think it's going to be really fun, honestly, but it might be tricky because of the dirt aptitude. Additionally, the next scenario, the track blazer scenario, what people have been calling Mant or Make a New Track, may drop before the finals of the CM. Unfortunately, there is going to be a very big power difference between Unity Cup aces and track blazer aces. So we're not sure exactly when it's going to drop. The announcement is just saying mid-March. So usually the CM starts 2 or 3 days after the signups, which kind of puts the finals or even a little bit of round 2 kind of in that nebulous area where this new scenario might drop. This means that people who are able to learn the scenario very quickly, or people who are able to do a lot of runs in the new scenario, might be able to make new aces for this CM before the finals happen. It's a little bit frustrating. I do wish that side games wouldn't drop new scenarios in the middle of CMs, but I have no control over that. So I would say my best advice is just to have fun with it. Try to do something different in this Dirt CM. Try not to sweat it too much. I still do think it's possible that the next scenario might not drop until after finals, or most people won't have enough time to make new aces before finals. But it is definitely a possibility that you could run into a Trackblazer ace in your finals. Again, I would just say to have fun with the prep for Dirt CM, maybe try to run some unconventional picks, maybe try to run some Oshis, just don't sweat it too much, and we'll see what happens when the monthly schedule is released. So thank you guys so much. I know this was a long one, but I wanted to talk about all the positions here, and I hope that this has helped you. Thank you again, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.